Fios is not cable. We're wired differently, which means you can get the fastest internet available with equal upload and download speeds from 50 to 500 megs. So you can upload 200 photos before your favorite song is finished. Click the ad and switch to Fios today to get our best offer ever.
Out in the street, they call it murder.
Jam rock, jump where the thugs them camp at. 2 pounder within a van box. It's in your handbag, your knapsack, it's in your backpack. This melody your girlfriend contacts. Come boy, not know this. Them only come around like tourists on the beach with a few club sodas. Bedtime.
Yes. Welcome to Jamrock. Welcome back to the Life Learning and Success Podcast with me, David Schumann. We have a very special guest on in a couple of minutes. He is a growth hack guru. Those of you who don't know what that is, you will at the end of this podcast. We're going to speak about accelerating your business today, putting it on a hypergrowth. Now, I've done that myself with my football camps and showcases over the years, but I'm always looking for new ways to continue to grow it. And our guest, Nick Cullen, who will be coming on, started his own business at 16 years old, knew that college was not necessarily the answer for him to build a business and build a lifestyle. He went into multiple different industries, but has found tremendous success starting his own company as an entrepreneur with Second Flight Consulting. He is training other small businesses and large businesses on how to growth hack their business, accelerate sales, get leads, and generate their own business. Let's put him on right now. Nick, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's going on? How's it going?
Nick, I gave you a huge build-up here, because I think what we're going to talk about today is not just incredibly exciting, but it's something that almost nobody really knows about. So, in your business, in training small businesses, in training large business, any person who wants to accelerate their business, we're going to discuss a lot of that today with you because you are the guru in this. So I'm really excited to have you on.
Awesome. Yeah, man. I'm excited to drop some value bombs on this podcast. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Value bombs. I already have my first one I'm writing down because those of you who are on listening to this, when you get to listen to this on iTunes, Nick, he drops value bombs the whole entire show. So you'll get to hear, and I've gotten to know him over the years really well. So he'll be dropping value bombs all day long. Nick, give everybody a little bit of background about yourself and what you do and how you got to this point.
Yeah, not a problem. So I kind of been this nonconformist when it comes to like the way I see the world with business and with marketing and just with life in general, right? So when I was like a young kid, I was always told, like every young kid, you gotta to get a job and work at McDonald's or do something that you're gonna hate, you're just gonna dread it, and you're adding no value to yourself or your life. And I decided there was other things I wanted to pursue and other things I was passionate about. When I was younger, it was music. So I figured out a really cool way to like integrate this cool little algorithm that could scrape people who recently commented on other artists music videos and introduce them to other artists. And that's kind of when the itch kind of happened, right? I realized that like there's some really cool ways to use the internet to help market people that no one was doing. And I always like being like the Christopher Columbus of like coming up with new and innovative ideas that make big impact to a business. And when I was younger, I realized how cool it is to run your own business and make money doing it successfully. And at a young age, making a few grand, just getting an artist here and there to market themselves and doing something I love, I realized that's the path I really wanted to take. But, I did kind of fall into, following conformity a little bit with, what people, said, you got to climb the ladder to be successful. And, I was fortunate enough when I had my big success when I was a teenager to get picked up by some pretty cool companies. And, I also never even went to college. I just kind of went out of the gate, with some really great things. And it took me till about 22, 23 years old when I was my last kind of, I guess, day job was with a financial firm. I had a few $1 billion assets under management. My official title was, Chief Business Development and Marketing Officer. And I handled, the aspects of the online marketing for them because they wanted to be innovative with, the way to do business online. And most financial advisors, as we know, are not really doing any innovative stuff when it comes to that. But, I kind of realized at that point in my life, I was making great money, right? And I was doing some really cool stuff. But the biggest thing that was missing was fulfillment. And when you're not fulfilled, even if, you kind of realize that whole saying, like, it's not about the money, right? Because when you're making money and you're not happy with how you're making the money, there's no real reason. You kind of you start realizing that you're stripping your soul away a little bit. And, at that moment, that's when I was kind of like, you know what, I really want to, explore where I was the most fulfilled, which is when I had my own thing. And I started, playing around with that, and I realized, this is what I got to do. And I just said, screw it, I'm going to do it. And I went through that grind period for 6 months, not really making much. And then all of a sudden, all the efforts that I put in and applying my own growth hacking techniques, really skyrocketed myself and my business to now, we're at a point where, a business that's only been matured for, was mature for maybe a little over a year, it started kicking in, 6-figure a month, monthly revenues. And it's just amazing to kind of see how something could grow and manifest, but, you do have to put in that grind to get there. So, things have been great. We've been doing a lot of cool stuff. We've been doing a lot of different things with the business, and now I'm doing stuff like this with cool guys like you, Dave.
Cool guys I was probably cool about 15 years ago, but but I try to remain as cool as I possibly can. I want to touch on a couple things. First of all, before we get into the growth hacking stuff, and I want to build everybody up onto it, obviously, but I think some really interesting things you touched on. You didn't go to college, okay, and obviously there's value in going to college for people that is necessary, but I do believe that if it's someone that is aggressive and knows what they want out of life, especially for entrepreneurs, that is not necessarily a path. Now, that doesn't mean that every entrepreneur can go right out of high school and do that. That doesn't mean that, entrepreneurs come from all different shapes and sizes and ways, and there's different acceleration curves. What do you feel that you needed right away at that time that college could not give you, that going out and going and making your own money could?
Well, you know what? I actually didn't know what that value was till I kind of achieved success a little bit, right? In the beginning, I wanted to go because you kind of got conditioned that you kind of have to go, right? And, when I was younger, I kind of, when I was 17, I went through a pretty hard, family issue that, still to this day, I'm estranged from my family because, what happened and the struggles that I kind of went through when I was a teenager. So I wanted to go to school. I actually had big opportunities to go to some great schools, but the problem was, the invisible hand, which is money, right? I literally couldn't afford it. No matter how much grants or loans I could get myself into massive debt, I couldn't even get the debt because I was just an independent. I had literally, nothing really to show for it. And on top of that, I had real life problems to go through. At a young age, you kind of got to support yourself, and you don't have mom or dad to do that for you. So you got to do it for yourself. So I kind of had to choose, all right, I'm making money, I'm getting opportunities, or do I go to school and put myself in debt and then put myself into a position where I'm not making enough money to put the roof over my head and pay for my bills and do all those things, and I had to choose the route that I know was going to at least be guaranteed without, putting myself into debt. And luckily at that time when I was young, I invested the money I was making all throughout my years more so into mentorship programs. And I was aligning myself with people and coaches and organizations to sit in with people who are already successful, because they say, the people that you surround, the 5 people that you hang out with the most would represent who you are as a person and even your success. And, growing up, especially in my teenage years, I wasn't hanging out with other people my age. Like, my really good friends were, 40 years old. So you got this, 18, 19, 20-year-old kid hanging out with people who were double the age. But those were the people that I know mentally I was aligning myself with and who I, admired and looked up to. And, that's the network I knew I needed to be in and engrave myself in order to get myself to a position where I would absorb all those years of college I would have acquired on top of all the life experience to make myself more matured and be able to also get into, I would say, the gladiator ring with everyone else, but in a level that age is not even a factor anymore, because at a mental wavelength, it's all equal. And, when in the beginning, when I used to, do my business, right, when I was, 20-something years old, when I first started, even when I was trying to get a job, in my late teens and early 20s, on the phone, people would think I was maybe 30 years old or older, from how I carried myself and, what I knew and all the accomplishments I even had at that time. And then when they meet me, they see this, I still have the baby face a little bit, but, they'll see this young kid. Luckily I was tall, so that helped. But if I was short, they would totally think I was some sort of teenager. And, you kind of got to learn also how to handle adversity. And I feel like college really doesn't teach you so much about adversity. I think now looking forward and seeing what the problem is with young youth, right, coming out of college and struggling, is that we never really, from seeing people in my generation, who actually did the appropriate path instead of my path, which is far right. What's sad is that they're just not poised, right? It's they're not ready, and I don't know how else to explain it. Most people are just not ready, and I feel like they're just not set so much with the adversity to learn and grow within, and actually take this time to self-reflect and understand what qualities and values that they have to bring naturally, organically, and how to amplify that and grow that, and even find the areas that they identify as shortfalls to then find areas that they help grow those falls in, because we can't live a life that's structured, because life isn't structured. And in college, everything's structured. In high school and in grammar school, everything is so structured. And then when you get thrown into life right after college, you realize shit is not structured. It's just not at all. And I think when I was growing up and going through the unstructured life, I learned that. I learned how to, swim in that pool. And I think that's really kind of what got me here, and that I know college would not have been able to provide for me at the level that I was kind of put into. And if I had to say, if there's one thing that kind of gave me the edge for not going to college, or what college I feel like couldn't have given me so much that I got, on my own route, it's kind of that, right?
And I think you just, first of all, your first value bomb went off. Didn't take you long. I knew it was coming. Life is not structured is tremendous. One of the things that I always like to say is you got to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. And people, in my opinion, and this isn't, why do people choose, and this is not knocking people that choose a corporate life. My girlfriend, that's what she does, and she's very successful, right? But the corporate life, or the structured life of this is what you have to do each year, this is what's expected of you, set by other people, is comfortable, okay? And you can make a good living in it. The being an entrepreneur and going after it, there are literally months, and people think, they always see this, the upside of it, and that is the goal of the entrepreneur. But the beauty of the entrepreneur, the beauty of someone who goes after it, is they're comfortable with the fact that, this month I might be eating lobster, and next month I'm eating a hamburger without any cheese and no bun. So that's the part of it, and you have to take, if you don't take that action to get yourself in a position to be that success monster, and you don't take that massive amount of action in order to do that, you're going to be in a position where you're never going to know what you can be. And you know what? If you're not afraid to fail and make mistakes, and sometimes you might spend money here and it doesn't work out, and then you learn from it, or you spend money here and now it does work out, and you learn from that, and you know, attack business. You know, sales is business, and that's going to segue into what I want to talk about next. But I think you hit it really on the head. Life is not structured. Everybody is taught, because the generation, not your generation as much, but my generation from the generation prior to me, in order to do better than your parents, okay, you were taught that you have to go to college, you have to get a job, you have to get the best education you can, you have to do this. In order to do that, you have to go to school, and you have to, you know, and now it's been proven that yes, there's tremendous value in education. There's tremendous value in a lot of different types of learning. You know, for me, playing football was honestly, I hate to say it, and I don't know what you know, people will think about this, but honestly, playing football and coaching football has taught me as much about running a business and being an entrepreneur, good and bad, as going to college and sitting into my entrepreneurship class. And I'll segue this into sales. And I there's not that many people I've shared this with, but I'm sharing it now, obviously, with the world. But when I was in graduate school, a player came up to me that asked me if I could help them with a paper. And they paid me to help them with a paper. Where this is right around 1997, 98, that time period when the internet was starting to boom. I built a website and said, you know what, I could probably get writers and so on and so forth. This is before Uber, right? And I had writers across the country writing papers for people. I had no idea what we were doing. We were using the internet. We built like a 5-page website, and we were selling. We're basically selling writing services to basically anything anybody wanted to get written. And most of it obviously was college papers at the time. And in 1998, at 24 years old, I was an unintended entrepreneur. I was making probably about $200,000 in revenue. We probably spend it, all of it, okay? But we were making that amount of money through the internet, just kind of getting after it. And what I learned about school was my entrepreneur class. I went and presented two things. I presented the business that I was running, and then the opportunities in that business, which I thought were, at the time, web design, technological structure, networking, all those kind of things, which are kind of starting. I was kind of saying that was going to be a boom, and that's where we really would move our business. This was just us learning. And my entrepreneur professor gave me a C- on that paper at presentation, okay? And he said, that business can never get off the ground. And I went to him after the class. I said, thank you for the C- on the paper and the B- in the class. This was my MBA program, Nick, and a B- in the class. And I just wanted you to know that I made about $200,000 in revenue and something that you said couldn't be done.
Isn't it funny how that works?
Isn't that funny? I was already doing it. It was like, I did it because I was like, entrepreneur class. I'm like, build a business. I'm already doing one, so I'll write about this, And my professor, I'll always remember this. My professor, he didn't know shit about business. That's the bottom line. He didn't know shit about business. So he knew about corporate structure, and he knew about, I should say entrepreneurship. He knew about corporate structure, but nothing else. So that brings me to my segue, my long way of saying, I want to talk about how not just about how you're helping customers, but what growth hacking is, and how can people get the most out of their business from what you do.
So here's the biggest thing, right? I think when people think about business, whether it's starting their own business or even thinking about, with their own existing business, how could they continue to grow? And the immediate, line that people think about, or if they go into a meeting, with their team, the immediate line that gets thrown out is, okay, guys, we needed an idea. We need to think outside the box for that idea. We need something so outside the box that's going to help bring us into market, or I need to build a business that's so outside the box that people are just going to love it, right? But the problem is when people think outside the box is that box becomes infinite, right? When you think outside of it, it's boundless. It makes you start realizing that when you start thinking for most people outside the box, you go a mile wide and an inch deep, and you end up not doing anything, or you don't have really any kind of actionable plan. And when I look at growth hacking, and when people hear about growth hacking, they know it as the implementation side, very data driven, and A/B split testing and all these nuances. But realistically, I look at it more like a mindset. Growth hacking is a mindset, and it's not about thinking outside the box. It's more about thinking about how you make that box smaller, right? Making that box smaller so that way things that you want to do to get to that goal is more efficient, and it's more practical. And that's the thing when people realize and switch it. It's not about thinking outside the box. It's about what's inside my box and how do I make that box smaller so that way I can get it better, right? And get it faster and get it more efficiently and cheaper.
Is that like finding a niche? Explain that a little bit.
For some people, it can be finding a niche. Like, for instance, I don't know if your listeners know, but, Dave and I both work together on his NUC company. And it's as easy as thinking about your buyer's persona and what they want, right? So, for instance, with, like, the NUC Instagram, right, and the content that they were producing, it was very simple as, like, okay, most companies would think, like if they're an event kind of driven company, that they're going to just post pictures of their event, right? And as that does get engagement, you sometimes forget, like, okay, but what's going to actually drive my email signup? So what's going to drive that aspect, right? And you start thinking outside the box. But realistically, when we took the approach with NUC, it was more about thinking, how we make that box smaller and making people want to enjoy the content better. So we looked at more so focused, like, okay, looking at the persona of the high school kids, what are they already doing? Let's not think crazy and, jump the shark. Let's think about stuff that's practical. And we realized that these kids, these are athletes, and what athletes like to do is like they like to look at other athletes perform. But the problem was that every one person that was an athlete in high school or middle school, the only athletes they had to look at were professional athletes, like, NFL or college. And the type of content that was out there that was focused on their peers was very limited. So it makes the most sense if you want to drive and grow an Instagram account or a social media account that caters to that demographic, why not produce something that's also caters to them? And if you have a network of, like, how many players you have probably serviced over the last 2 years, thousands. If we just say, hey, listen, we want to feature you on our Instagram, show us your clip, now you're curating all that content. So now you don't have to worry about even getting it or finding it. People are giving it to you. And then you're using that content, and other people are seeing, like, the other best athletes that also come out of the NUC brand from the Instagram account, and are also seeing content that is also really cool that they could also say, like, hey, I know that kid. Or, hey, if I played against that kid in high school, I would have knocked him out. Or whatever case may be. Like all that cool stuff, because now we're starting to think in the mindset of the persona, and doing that and identifying a way to do that fast and efficient is all about, again, thinking about how we get that box smaller. And the end result of that was, your Instagram account was a little over 1,000, and now it's sitting close to 50,000 with the engagement rates being through the roof. So it's like little things like that make big differences, and we didn't even get to the point where just doing that also drove, I think, the most email signups that you got organically than you ever even had, without even have to spend an extra dime on it. So it's like really cool stuff that you have to think about. And it's all about, again, thinking very precisely and looking more into the persona and getting that box small around what their core values and interest is, and executing on that aspect.
How do people find out what that small box should be for them? I mean, and you did something unique, and to give, our listeners some insight as to it. we had basically, I think at the time, I changed it a little bit now, but it was like a big hits Instagram, basically a quick clips, and I think we expanded to more than just big hits. But at the time, we had a big hits Instagram account, but it's NUC football, and we leveraged it to build a following. And basically, what ended up happening, we used a lead gen, and we ended up generating, I think it's somewhere now around 10,000 leads in about, obviously I've taken it since you're with us, but I would say about 10,000 leads in a year. Think about anybody that could generate 10,000 leads in a year for anything. Okay, how hard that is. We generate 10,000 leads, and so I think that I would have never in a million years to think that would have been a way to generate leads. The traditional thing is, okay, I say, hey, give me nominations, which I still do. Give me, nominate for an event, and people, nominate for an event, right? Or I'll have a player of the week, and here's the player of the week, and they nominate for an event. How do people find within that smaller box a new way of thinking? Like, how does that thought process, how do people get that thought process as an entrepreneur?
I think one of the things that they should start doing, right, is one, evaluate what their biggest pain point is, right, and what the biggest problem they have. Where's their bottleneck, right? Because once you identify your bottleneck, the next thing you want to do is reverse engineer how you got to that bottleneck. Like, what's happening? Instead of looking from the bottom up, you got to look at it from the top down, right? So if we would have evaluated, let's say, how do we improve NUC's, engagement and content and social media growth, and how that could translate to, signups. If we looked at it like, okay, let's look at the content that we already have and maybe come up with other content, but we would have just been pretty much guess and check, right? We would have came up with some sort of random concept that we had no clue about, that we just, we thought was maybe a cool idea because we thought outside the box. And, we did it. Maybe you did a little better. Maybe you didn't. But we would have kept doing that and doing that and doing that. But we realized, all right, the bottleneck is that issue. Instead of coming from the ground up, let's look at what other people are doing that's already working. And how do we emulate that? And how do we put our own spin to it? Because it's so much easier to look at successes of other people and developing a spin-off that is better than that already perceived success. And I think for any person who's starting a business or wanting to start a business, or any person who's looking to get into a new territory, or any person who's already has a business now and they want to be more competitive, humble yourself in looking at the people who are already crushing it, or the people who are doing things that are already being successful, or the companies that are already successful that is going to be your competitor, or maybe offers a service that right now is far superior than yours, and just evaluate it and find out why it's like that, and then just break it down from the top down and look at okay, from the top down, reverse engineering this process, this is all the steps that they're doing to get to the beginning stage, which is where you need to start at. And then as you're going through that process, you start to identify, okay, well, in this phase of what they're trying to do, it's good, but they can make it so much better if they did it like this. And then go down to the next step. And then eventually when you get to the, where you realize it's the starting point and you work your way back up, you're now developing a strategy that is better than the competitors because you vetted it and you went through exactly what they already have that's successful, but you now made a better version of it. And I think you can apply that with anything in business or even in life, that kind of methodology. And again, that's thinking more in the concept of thinking how you make that box smaller than thinking about outside of it.
I'm always amazed at, because I deal with sponsors that want to get more business, okay, and they'll look at a platform and they'll go, well, we'll go to this event here or this event here because it has TV exposure, okay, and I'll say, well, are you advertising on that game? Oh, well, they'll put our logo on. I said, well, no one's buying from that. That's just ridiculous. I mean, people are, if you're running Coca-Cola commercials 20 times an hour, yeah, you know what? People might be compelled to go buy some Coca-Cola. But if you flash across the screen once and no one really picks up on it, what value are you creating? You have to have that continuous, everyday grind value when you're trying to look at things from a business. Where does the gap from what corporations try to do in order to generate business differentiate from where people like yourself and other guys who have had radical growth, growth hacking, radical growth within Instagram? We see 16-year-olds, I remember you pointed out a 16-year-old that had an Instagram page that he was making about 75 to 100K a year, 16 years old, okay, by building this platform. Where are corporations missing the boat where individuals are nailing it?
Yeah. So this is the biggest thing, right? There's corporate America is, especially when you look into deep corporate America, right? They're stuck into their ways. They're going to always do heavy media buys. They're going to plaster themselves in every single type of media buy, as many commercials as they get, as many radio stations to print, newspaper, all those things, right? But as human beings and people who spend more time even looking at the computer and reading stories that other people write rather than the stories that are on, CNN and, Time magazine and things like that. We're now in a world and age that people are digesting content from other people, and people are trusting the word of other people. And it's like the thing that people are missing out on, especially corporations, is you want to try emulating and involving your brand to be the voice that is being told by other people. And what I mean by that is, the companies that are doing a great job of this are leveraging the social proof aspect of influencers. And I'm not talking about like the Kim Kardashians who have a million upon million upon million of followers that are like the pseudo celebrities of the internet. I'm talking about the B-list and the C-list kind of guys, right? Or maybe the people who just built a pretty good audience of maybe 50,000 people, but they have a great tribe and their engagement rates are just insane. And they're not really getting their inbox knocked on by companies to say, hey, can you please talk about my product? They're actually trying to get companies to just give them free products, right? So, I think the thing that most people are just missing out on is not leveraging that capability of getting other people to talk about their brand and their story and their experience. And from one of the things that I've been working on with clients and businesses is getting and amplifying to get as many people to talk about their brand, because at the end of the day, people trust other people that they are already entrusting in. So like say if you're watching someone who you watch all the time, you love them, and you feel like you could trust them, you absorb their content, you read their blogs, you watch their videos, if they say, hey, this is a good product, you're more than likely going to sway and be like, I want to check out that product. But if you see a Google ad, or you see a display ad, or you see a newspaper ad, or you see that commercial about 50 million times, or you go on YouTube to watch a cat video and you see the Geico commercial come up yet again, and you're just blinded to it. You like mentally put blinders. But as soon as someone, whether it's a close friend or someone that, or a person that you read their blog or you watch their videos that you personally gave your mental trust to, and they say, hey, this is a good product, I found it really useful, this is why I like it, and you should check it out here. Here's the link to go look it at. And you see other people saying the same thing, more than likely you're going to buy that product because it's like your best friend telling you this is a good product and you already built that trust in them. But not many people are leveraging that aspect of there's people who are willing and able and have great mini platforms, the mid-sized platforms, the super-sized platforms to share that story to a group of people who would literally buy anything as long as they say to buy it. I mean, just look at like freaking, Kylie Kardashian or Kylie Jenner actually, right? Kylie Jenner, she comes out with this, makeup line and she has a great following. She comes out with the makeup line. She's like an instant, multi-million-dollar company because people trust her. She has a great following. So I think people need to realize there's people out there that work like that.
No, it's true. And you know what it is? It's interesting. People actually trust the Kardashian brand to deliver glam. And see, that's what I think it is, you know. They identified, I guess, that small box, and Kylie really identified it with that makeup stuff, which I admit is not my forte from an industry standpoint, but I do recognize from a business standpoint, they represent glam. They represent glam. There's no other way to put it, Hollywood and glam. And she capitalizes on that, and the Kardashians capitalize on that over and over again, just by putting their name on products and then representing that. You know, they do a lot of the stuff with Snapchat and Instagram, but however the platform is, they reach it, and people trust that, you know, and it's so interesting to me. I mean, honestly, I think that they have mastered that part from to a T. I guess it all started with a sex tape, but they leveraged that sex tape into things that no one else has ever leveraged it into. So I think that's really, really amazing. I think what you talked about, getting people to find that audience is critical. And now I want to take just one quick step back and say, how did you learn these things that have made you so smart in this area? What did you do, okay, in helping people? And it could be in anything someone's learning, but what did you do to make yourself an expert in this specific niche like this?
So I think the biggest thing, that's a great question too, because I feel like a lot of this was just, you know how some people just have like a third eye seeing the world. You know, they're on a different wavelength. I feel like a lot of that stuff is just kind of like naturally, the whole nature versus nurture kind of thing. But I have to say, the information that I absorbed young and it just did it and just applied it and took my bruises and took my scratches through it, but I learned from every mistake, right? I probably, before I got this success of my own business, I probably had at least a dozen failed ideas. I wasn't, this like, this wonder kid. I had a ton of bad ideas that I lost money on and a ton of bad ideas that never got off the ground. And, I learned from every one of them. And I read probably more business books than any book I probably even picked up in school, including textbooks. And I just absorbed the information that's out there. Because, guys, like, there's so much information out there, both free and paid for, that could give you so much knowledge on areas that could, pretty much quantum leap your mental capacity of what you want to do or how to do it really, really well faster than anything out there. But, I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's a play for, universities and this whole, like, mindset that you only absorb greatness of information and knowledge through college education or some formal education. I don't know. I think we've been conditioned to think that we can't become and acquire great knowledge unless we go through that route. And realistically, you could probably get better knowledge by absorbing the knowledge that's already out there for you to just grab. And I think what got me to know a lot of this stuff is that I just became a nerd with like reading and listening and applying and then repeating those 3 steps, reading and listening and applying and reading and listening and applying. And then eventually I figured out some things that actually work. And then every single one of my failures, I, again, reverse engineered why I failed and how I can not make that failure. And when I do it again, it won't become a failure. And I think that's the biggest thing. People got to embrace failure, because I talk to so many entrepreneurs who want to start up a business, because I do have an academy that, teaches people, how to do it themselves. And the number one thing I hear people say is that they just don't want to fail. They don't want to fail, and that's why they don't move forward. That's why they don't take action. That's why they don't make an investment in themselves. And I feel like you need to embrace failure in order to be successful. And if you don't embrace it, then you're never going to take the chance and learn from it. And encourage people to do stuff that they have a gut feeling that they may actually fail, but do everything you can to not fail. But if it fails, you're going to get so much knowledge from that. You're going to learn so much about yourself. And you're going to learn so much about the things that you did to get you towards that chance of actually realizing you failed. And then you're going to pick yourself back up. You're going to learn from that. And then you're going to come up with something like 10 times better. But that only happens when you do fail. And every person I do business with or people I talk to or other entrepreneurs, I don't ask them, what their success was, right? I ask every single person I do business with or I hire or whoever, right? I ask them, like, hey, so what was your biggest failure? And if they say, oh, I never had any failures, I'm like, all right, I don't really want to talk to you. Because if someone didn't fail, then they didn't do enough in life, right? And I strongly believe that. I feel like people need to fail and embrace it and then learn from it. And I think that's going to help people to get to the area where they kind of see themselves being the sharp, multifaceted business owner, entrepreneur, and just human being.
Yeah, people like to play it safe, and I think that's the big, I always like to say this. If you have a dream, go after it, and if you need to make extra money, go drive Uber or Lyft at night, because that way you can pursue what you really want to do. And if you need to, obviously everyone's in different situations. You can go make $25, $30 an hour, work 6 hours a day, and make enough money to survive while you're doing that and figuring out your business. But don't half-ass it. Go all in and figure it out, because when you're laying there in your deathbed, okay, I always say this. People are like, oh, you talk about death a lot. I said, yeah, you know why? Because I want to live life. Like, I'm trying to figure out how I can live life more, okay, and enjoy it. And for me, it's some form of going after success and creating opportunities and in some cases helping people. Whatever that is for somebody, you got to go after, because you don't want to be in your deathbed and say, oh, I think I could have been good at this, because we're all going to die, and hopefully it's a long time for all of us, but we're all going to die at some point, and you don't want to leave anything on the table. That's the worst thing you do, is leave something on the table that's a mistake, and then, eventually your kids learn from that, and then they leave something on their table, So I think that's real important. I think, you touch on a lot of things. I think learning from your ideas your bad ideas is really important. That continuous learning, I think, is incredible. What would you think, if you could give me, I just got a couple of fast fire questions as we wrap up here, because I think you've really covered some amazing things. Two pieces of advice that you've heard that you really believe in.
Two pieces of advice that I heard.
If it's one, even one piece of advice you could share that you really believe, that you've heard that you really believe in.
Okay. It's a philosophy that I've heard by I'm going blank on the name, which is so sad. But it's a very successful entrepreneur, and he always used the term "no one's gonna die." And it's funny, I use the whole death thing, right? But he like said, like, whenever something was happening or things weren't working out or whatever, when people start to freak out about some things and realize that it could be really petty stuff. And he used to say, to clients or to the team or even, close family, friends, he used to be like, hey, no one's going to die. No one's going to die from this. And I think, I absorbed that, because in business and life, there's going to be times that shit just looks really bad. Things look bleak, right? You can realize, like, you can have a great month, and the next month, everything could just tumble down. And I think at the end of the day, we get so fixated on, the material things and money and all these things, and we forget about, like, realistically, you have your life to be appreciative about. No one's dying. You're not, nothing bad really, truly happening. And I think that helps it puts me in check sometimes when, when certain things kind of keep me off center. And I kind of revert that. I'd be like, you know what? At the end of the day, no one's getting killed from this, or I'm not dying from this. So let me just handle this like, it's not as bad as that. And so yeah, that was one thing. But a personal motto that I kind of really believe in, that holds true to me, is like, I always use the line, inside of every self-made, millionaire is a poor kid who followed his dream, right? And I think we all kind of reflect on that when we want to, see ourselves in a certain height, and when you look at all the successful people who were self-made, not people who, just got it handed to them, self-made, like, like Richard Branson and, Bill Gates and all these guys, they were just regular people like most of us, and some, maybe even worse off than most of us, and they just had a dream and they followed through with it. And that's something I hold really tightly, because I'll never forget when I was younger, even just years back, even when I was starting my business, I burned through $30,000 just because of my burn rate, and realized in my bank account I only had like a few $100, and I needed that client, or else I was literally going under. And I just kind of dug deep and got it. You realize, like, if you really want to be it, and those people who are really, we're just all poor kids inside. So I think that's something I know, a motto I really hold true.
That's a really, really good point. It's funny. I listen. I don't know if you've ever read any books on with Grant Cardone, 10X, which I think is interesting, and I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan. I'm a big fan of Lewis Howe, and I think that they talk about putting things into action, getting after it, and figuring out how to make everything work. And one of the things I did, and I have one last question for you, and then we'll wrap it up. But one of the things I did is I'm coaching football now, and I decided that I'll work with come back and coach this year. And I was struggling in the old days. I had I really had the business rolling the way I wanted to. We had a little bit of a downside this year, and now we're building back. I always would kind of just promote, and had staff. But now that it's mostly myself and a few other people, I got to carry the ball. So what I figured out, it took me a while to figure this out, and I just said, you know what? I'm just going to wake up. I fall asleep after practice. I get tired. I end up falling asleep at 9:30, 10 anyway. No matter what I do, no matter if I wake up late or early. So I said, you know what? I'm going to get up at 4:30 in the morning. Work out at 4:30 in the morning. Go and play with my son from 6:30 when he wakes up inevitably at 6:30 every morning till 7:30, 8 o'clock. So at least we have real quality time. And then once he goes off to school, and begin my day and start that process. So I get everything I need to get done in a day. And you know what I realized? Guess what? I still get tired around 10 o'clock, but now I'm getting everything done that I need to get done, and I'm actually enjoying the process because of that. I think it's everyone's got to find what it takes to be successful and utilize those tools. There's so many tools out there. You can't stop learning. I think you talked about the book thing. They say that most successful CEOs in the world, or I guess the people who make the 80% of the money, they read on an average 60 books or more a year. Okay, I try to knock out a book a week myself, and after hearing that, I try to knock out a book a week. And it's amazing when you ravage the information how much you can learn. Which brings me to my final question: is there a book out there that you would recommend to somebody, either on growth hacking or being a successful entrepreneur, that you would recommend to somebody else?
I would say the book that changed my life was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill that I read 3 years ago.
Which I have read myself.
I read that book so much, and I have the audiobooks. I just always reflect on that.
It stands the test of time, right? It stands the actual test of time. That's a book that's been around for a long time. It stands the test of time. I really appreciate you coming on. believe it or not, my Facebook Live, you're a rock star because I think you got the most people that we've had yet in this 8th Life Learning and Success podcast. So I really thank you for coming on. I think you share great information with people, and as always, as your neighbor and someone that I really trust in the business world, I truly thank you and wish you the very best in success.
Hey, no problem, man. I do appreciate it. And, if you need me again, let me know.
Have a great day, Nick.
Later, brother.
Life Learning Success Podcast, Episode 8, dropped. Make sure you go to iTunes, check it out, comment, give us some stars, give us love. Life Learning and Success Podcast. The more love we get, the more we can continue to grow it. Until the next time, we'll have another great guest on again. Have a great day.
And don't know the real hardcore, cause sandals are not back to. The thugs them we do where them got to. And won't think twice to shot to. Don't make them spot you, unless you carry guns and lots to. A beer tough king come at you. When trench town man stop laugh and block off traffic. Then them we learn pop up and them start chop it. We dip in.
Keep yourself and your wallet healthy with Wellness Plus with Plenty at Rite Aid. In addition to Plenty points, earn Wellness Plus points every time you shop. $1 spent on everyday items gets you 1 point, and get up to 25 points on every prescription you fill. When you've reached 1,000 Wellness Plus points, you'll get 20% off our regular prices for a year. And that's just one of the 4 ways to save. Now through October 1st, earn 1,000 Plenty points when you spend $30 on select P&G products. See RiteAid.com and Circular for details.
Fios is not cable. We're wired differently, which means you can get the fastest internet available with equal upload and download speeds from 50 to 500 megs. So you can upload 200 photos before your favorite song is finished. Click the ad and switch to Fios today to get our best offer ever.